Okay, so I think the time has come to introduce the fart. One of the reasons that drove this on is because this was the real reason I bought this Genesis scope. It's not really necessary for any of my other projects. And I had it on one of the BMGs, and I really am convinced that a BMG is way too hard on it. And the reason I say that, to reiterate, is because this is very heavy. It's externally, and trust me, when I run it down to long range, that becomes way more apparent. It shoots to one point of impact, naked, just the way it is. And I put rubber bands over it to hold it down to increase the spring back tension so that it snaps back harder. And that point of impact changes by something in the order of 2 feet. It's so far off the paper that it might be 2.5 feet. It was over off of a blueprint and onto the plywood somewhere, and I had a limited time, and I just stopped and rebore sighted the whole thing. I didn't even drive down, it was pouring down rain. And when I rebore sighted it with the rubbers on the scope, and I don't know if this is, I don't even want to tell March about it. They'll probably blow a freaking gasket. You're wrapping our scope with rubber bands? I don't know. I work, dude. I go make stuff. I build stuff. Anyway, this is the whole package that this is designed for. The 50 fart is designed to shoot 750 grain to 1,000 grain. It's kind of nice in the interim. Cutting edges come up with 1,000 grain bullet. They didn't have that back when I did this thing 10 years ago. The main reason I haven't brought it into public view, I've referenced it a couple of times that I have another 50 project going, but I'm not talking about it, is because I'm not an SOT and I'm not licensed to build a suppressor for this thing, and it is designed specifically from the ground up to accomplish one thing. Drop a ton of energy on an elk at 600 yards silently. Silent but deadly. Back in the day, long time ago, I built a silencer tube. I lived on 5 acres, and the neighbors got bothered by me shooting at night. So I built a tube that I could shoot through that had tires and stuff in it. Insulation, pig wire, what I call, not really hardware cloth. Anyway, it was a great big silencer that you could crawl through. And I shot it for a while. Obviously it's disconnected from the gun. There's no legality issues with it. And I revived that concept when I started putting this thing together, because this was 10, 12 years ago. Suppressors weren't at the stage they are now, and I can just go apply and get one within a year. So I've got application in, but that's neither here nor there. Right now, I just need to state clearly, this is not a suppressor. This is a mock-up. But the problem is, because I'm anal Allen Waugh, I need to make sure the gun reacts correctly in my mind. I wanted to make sure that I got it set up and balanced exactly as it's going to be presented, because all of a sudden I want to shoot it. I'm not going to shoot it suppressed, because I can't. So this is a steel tube. I went through the time of designing a suppressor to build for this thing on paper and weighing up the aluminum and finding out roughly what I wanted. This little 16-inch barrel in here doesn't give it much weight forwardness at all in this huge scope, and some cool stuff on the back, which I'll show you in just a minute. I want it to balance like a hunting gun. I want it to balance right here so you can carry it. But this is the configuration that I want. And the project has been held up for 9 years. If I built it 10 years ago, it's been held up for 9 years. Because I haven't been able to test it. I built the world's biggest muzzle brake, which I've showed you here before. I don't even know where it is. It's this long and it's this big around. I'm currently building some that have at least as much area on them, but this was back when I knew less. And I put this thing together. The weak point, the serious weak point, is this Savage action. It's not an AccuStock, but this is it's a small impulse cartridge. But since we've been talking about and testing, I don't know why I'm starting to warm up finally, guys. It's cold out there. I've been on the lake. Since this is what I would call, or kind of am calling, a low impulse gun, it only makes about 2,000 pounds of energy. So in my mind, I'm like, you know, that's not even a, not only is it not a 338 LAPA, that's not even a old, you know, 300 Win Mag or 300 WSM. But as I've been shooting these 50 BMGs, I'm finding out that the impulse generated by raw mass in motion, the bending and flexing that occurs from firing an enormous slug at relatively low velocities, is very different. And I'll illustrate that. I've got 22 BRs that I used to go out and slap dogs with and run them at 4,170 feet per second with little 40 grain bullets. They didn't recoil at all. And they made a ton of energy. I don't remember the numbers. But something like a 270 WSM will make more energy with its useful bullets than a 338 WSM or the 325 WSM, because energy builds as the square of the velocity, whereas it just builds linearly with weight. So it takes a lot more weight to build energy. And the thing I found out about this was, I'm a wimp. This is long before I even messed with the BMG. I took this thing out on the sled, no mock-up on it, no nothing, just a 16-inch barrel and a little scope, and I set the gun to the weight that I wanted. The barrel was threaded on the end, so I threaded some weights and muzzle brakes and whatever onto it. When I say I threaded weights onto it, I took blocks of steel and I brought them up to the weight of what I thought would be finished. I didn't have a March Genesis at the time, but I tried to weight it out to get the feel, the hunting feel that I wanted. And this is important, because I knew I was going to have to do a big muzzle brake, because according to the numbers, this is a pretty efficient cartridge. I didn't realize how efficient until I actually built it and put it on the recoil sled and about knocked the thing into the back wall. The 750 grain A-Maxes, even at 1,000 and 1,050 feet per second, are orders of magnitude more destructive and orders of magnitude more, let me put it another way, I started that sentence wrong. They produce much more felt recoil. The bullet's in the barrel a long time, even at only 16 inches. Because it's going regular, it only goes up to 1,000 feet, it's pup, 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 chugging along. And the recoil impulse that is generated by chugging this thing up can only be compared to, I don't know, if you went out and got some 3.5 inch, 1 3/4 police buckshot, 1 3/4, 2 ounce goose loads, or some heavy 1.5 police buckshot loads, and fired them in a break open H&R. Brutal recoil. And all the pubises out there that will talk to you about how I shoot a 45-70 all day because it doesn't really kick, it just pushes you. I'm sorry. You're either ignorant or lying, or I don't even want to start maligning you. 45-70 in a packable gun will kick you, okay? But you go up to the bullets that thing's capable of shooting 400 and 500 grainers, and it will bash you. Well, with the BMG projects, I can mitigate that with muzzle brakes. It took me weeks and weeks of shooting to come to grips with the fact that I don't even have the option of holding on to these things and riding them down or anything. No, I have to stay completely out of them, catch them as they come back, build a muzzle brake big enough to stop them. But the 50 BMG has got, well, just to give you an idea how much it's got, 240 grains of powder means that you only get about 30 loads per pound. So you're shooting 1/30 of a pound of powder. Add that to the ejecta along with the 750 grain bullet. So that's 1,000 grains of ejecta right there. But with 200 to 240 for 50 of those grains being powder, I can use that in this muzzle brake. All of that 250 grains of ejecta is like, has got the force, the working force of a 300 Win Mag. Every time I say 300 Win Mag, I throw up a little bit in my mouth because I don't build that cartridge. I don't like that cartridge. I don't like anything about, everything is wrong about that. Somewhere between the 300 WSM and the 300 Hellbringer that I build is a perfect place for 30s. I'm not really into 30s, so it's not a big deal. I use the 300 WSM as a target round. And I build Hellbringers for people who are shooting what I call small game to not even medium. Deer. If you're shooting deer and antelope, the 30 is sufficient. If you're shooting big deer and elk, and I believe in 338 and up. But that's just a personal diatribe, because I believe things like Sonora whitetail and big bursty mule deer, elk are tough and they're hard to put. I would almost put elk on a plane with Indian Plains game, African Plains game. That's being hard to put down. But where I'm going is, I'm not trying to turn this into a history lesson, but I kind of have to. So, from the start, I had to wait this thing out. So I decided to build myself a tube. And this is steel. I built it out of steel to get the weight to where I projected it to be. And I did it so that I could shoot off the bench out here, because winter was coming at this time, and plus standing on my hind feet and shooting is ridiculous. You know, I can shoot a bow better than I can shoot a rifle or a handgun standing on my feet. So I built this big long tube, and I tested it with a decibel meter, and I proved that it doesn't attenuate the sound. And I got all set up to shoot this thing out. And this is an interesting concept because I've got a big clamp assembly here. I'm going to do something. I realize I can see most of this gun in here. So I'm going to do this. It's a big clamp assembly here that's finely machined, and it's about 2 inches from the action. And it's a full-blown support. And then out here behind the muzzle, I have another full-blown support clamped onto the barrel. Then the muzzle apparatus, and down the road there will be a silencing apparatus on here. But for right now, it's just a bonk hollow tube. And then I added more weight up here. I'll show you that in just a minute. I made it look all cool like that because I'm a redneck and I think that's cool. I don't know, right now if I shot it, it could almost be called a silencer even though it's not loaded because it's got an end cap in it. A big old chunk of weight. I got a big old chunk of metal in there and screwed in. And I left holes out the front. I'll show you all that in just a minute. But I wanted to make it kind of look like and feel like. And the reason for that is I wanted to, this muzzle heavy is going to be different because the actual suppressor is probably going to be aluminum tubing. But I'm taking a guess. I'm taking, not a guess, a swag. I'm swagging at balancing this thing. Because with these 50s, I'm finding out balance is just as important as it is on a PPC or any other little gun. So, to set this scenario up, I put it on the recoil sled. It about ripped the recoil sled into the next county. So I knew it was hitting hard. So I built this huge muzzle brake, which was an absolute and total failure. It did nothing. Back at that time, I was on good terms on Ventura Central. Had a lot of people I could bounce ideas off of. And once they started to understand it, my favorite was from a guy named Boyd Allen, who's a pigeon I respect mightily. And Boyd said, hey, what you need to do is make that thing into a double barrel and fire one for effect out of the top and fire another one down below just to actuate a muzzle brake. Chamber the bottom in 50 BMG or something. Chamber the other barrel in something. He got it. The point is he understood that we have this huge recoil impulse. And there's no way for me to illustrate that until I've kind of gotten into. I'm only still in the fledgling stage of this 50 BMG, but I'm seeing enough really good stuff that it's gonna pan out. I'm gonna keep going with it. I'm gonna be able to make it interesting. And this shoots the same bullet, but it shoots it at only 1,000 feet per second. This happens to be the screen door because I built a big forend on it, which you can kind of see. I'm not being fair about it, but I'm setting all my forends on the 50 BMGs now at 5 inches wide. I'm simplifying so I don't have to keep trading stuff out. Because now it's down to the point where I'm fighting with the fact that I think the guns are shooting. But I can't shoot them. I can't hold them. There's so much learning curve here. I could go on for 20 years. But I've gotten all kinds of really cool results. But I think I'm going to move this up here a little bit. This whole thing died on the vine because, as I keep leading up and alluding to here, the recoil was heinous. I couldn't control it. And I wanted to build a no more than a 10 or 12 pound gun that would take an elk at 1,000 yards, dead silent, hence the fart. Silent but deadly. I got all kinds of names, and I'm a wordsmith, so I'm really into cool naming and stuff, but this is just going to be the fart. But the idea that you could dump a ton of energy on an animal at 1,000 yards subsonic turns this into a worthy thing. All the other suppressed projects out there just make me laugh. Because a suppressed AR is 22 long rifle shooting subsonics. The ubiquitous 30 BlackOut, 300 BlackOut, the whole line of things. To me, suppressors are good for about 3 guns in the world. 45 ACPs, possibly some shotgun stuff. Although it screws, shotguns are a beautiful thing, man. It's hard for me to even imagine putting some kind of a big clunky thing on the, I don't know, you'd have to start the shotgun from scratch. So, what I'm telling you is, I'm wrapping up to is the fact that it turned out that the recoil on this thing is so savage that I couldn't control it. So I just set it aside. I'm done. I just said, well, screw it. I can't do anything with this, so I'm not going to do anything with this. And I went on and I did a whole bunch of other testing. I never even brought it in and fired it out the window with my mock-up tube on it. Because I did man up and shoot it one time and about died. So I figured, well, I've never gotten around, the COVID thing came along and the life got stupid and the world got stupid and I didn't even apply yet for, I'm going to just apply for and get a silencer permit for the thing. But it wasn't until recently I decided to tie it in. All of a sudden I thought, hey, I've got this low velocity one over there to play with. All I have to do is stick the tube back on and I can shoot it out the window even in the wintertime. So I'm excited about that. So I'm going to introduce it into the mix as I move along. And as I said, luckily it doesn't attenuate. I have decibel meters that I use to test for sound bubbles in my muzzle brake testing. So I said, well, I call them blast patterns. I don't know. The point is muzzle brakes hit you differently. Some of them are just wretched on your ears. Some of them hit your face like a shovel. Some of the muzzle brakes are a funny thing. So I've got that all dialed in, but I had the equipment to be able to go out and show this thing was not attenuated, so I can shoot it with this tube out the muzzle. I won't be able to shoot it the way it's set up. That's cool, I'll show you that in a minute. Because the front end looks like that. I can't even get it into the camera. That's the way it's going to be in the end, I hope. Something like that. That's an end cap with a compressor. There's a bunch of stuff going to go on here. But right now these are all loose. I decided I need to spin them out of here. Everything is loose on it. But I just wanted to show it to you, to show it off. I decided to totally change the vein here. Much as after 10 years of sitting on this thing and fussing and fudging, I decided, well, I'm going to bite the bullet, set it up for a 16 or 18 pound gun, because I found out from dealing with these that a 15 pound gun is not completely out of range. It's not, step this thing back where you can see it, get this crap out of the way. This is actually really cool. And this right here cost me $400 and some. Some guy builds them and he custom built this one. Manual, recoil, compression, pneumatic, hydraulic, blah, 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 blah. It's for the shotgunners. So the weak point that I have on this right now is going to be this unsupported action. I just threw this old Savage stock on because it's a Savage and it's what it came with, and I'm giving it a handle to hold. If I can get this thing mocked up to shoot one MOA at 100 yards, well, at any yardage it won't matter. And this scope will allow it to easily go out to 600. This thing's got 2,000, I don't even know how much. It's got an incredible amount of, I mean, it goes down till it points right at the barrel. And you can see past the barrel, which is weird. But anyway, I'm just introducing this because it looks like it might become part of the lineup as I'm testing here. And I haven't weighed it, but I'm going to call it a 15 pounder. And I think that will mitigate the recoil old school well enough that I can make it work. This is the thing that proved to me that physics don't lie, math don't lie, game don't lie. You cannot make a muzzle brake work without a whole bunch of extra gas. And this little guy has no extra gas. So I mocked this up. I've got a day and a half's worth of work in here to make a fake suppressor so that I can get the balance right. Because, and mainly the thing that tipped it over was the fact that Cutting Edge came out with these 1,000 grain bullets. That's what changed. So, we'll see if it works or not. But I'm excited to at least introduce it.